What's up, all the Power Ass crew? Today we're pulling the engine out of the Cherokee with a defective cherry picker. And it was an adventure, I'm telling you. Come on, show you how it's done. Dragged out my big monster cherry picker, and I say monster because look at this behemoth. Yeah, that bad boy's heavy. This was given to me many years ago by a friend of the family, and it's come in super handy. It has pulled, I cannot count how many engines. But as you see, we got big old tires here, but then we got your standard steel casters here that pivot, roll around, do all that fun stuff so you can maneuver it where you want. Up here, hook it to a trailer hitch ball, take it to a buddy's house, pull an engine, bring it on home. That's the second jack I put on it, old school Harbor Freight jobber there, and big massive chain on the end with a split system right there that you can just kind of set the length where you want it for the hook. Like I said, I cannot count how many engines this thing's pulled. A lot. As a matter of fact, it set the engine in that one. So here's what we got. Got the chain hooked up to the back of the engine, got a big old honking nut right there to hold things in place. And up here, bolt going into the side of the head. And notice I've got it here kind of diagonal across the engine. That is to help distribute weight this way. If you put it all on one side, the engine will want to twist to one side. Also, since we're talking about weight distribution, the chain is set up on the hook. It's not quite, like if you pick the chain up right here is the middle of the chain. You really don't want that. You want your chain to be biased toward the rear of the engine a little bit. But why, you ask? Good question. Because of the transmission still being attached, the engine's going to want to tilt back like this, which is okay to an extent. You don't want it to come out flat because as you pick it up, you're going to be hitting the transmission tunnel and, well, just kind of pain the tail, honestly. But you want it to pick up and just a slight tilt like this. And since we've got the core support out, we just got to pick it up just enough to bring it out like this. But you need a little bit of tilt to get the front of the engine up high enough to clear the bumper, but yet enough tilt that the transmission is not getting to the transmission tunnel. Now, odds are you're not going to hit the first time when you hook the chain up to the cherry picker. You may have to move the chain backwards, forward a little bit to get that proper tilt. They make this contraption that I used to have one that you can bolt to each side of the engine. It's got this hand crank that moves the hook back and forth that changes the weight bias or the center of gravity of the engine. Super handy. But I loaned it to my cousin many years ago, and he moved out of the house he was living in and left everything behind. See what you get for loaning stuff out. Now let me specify something. I said transmission's attached, not transfer case. Transfer case is right there. Don't try to pull the engine and transmission with the transfer case attached. That transfer case is a lot of weight. Plus, it makes the whole assembly so much longer, it's harder for it to come out. Plus, heavy object transfer case at the end of the line, leverage, makes that thing want to tilt a lot. Pull that transfer case to make life a lot easier on yourself. Okay, cool. Go ahead and take the nut off your motor mount bolt, because once we get the weight off the bolt, we're going to be able to knock that bolt out of there. But as long as the engine weight is holding down on the bolt, you're not going to move it. So go ahead and take the nut off, and when we pick the engine up, at that point, we'll be able to hopefully knock that bolt back. Now over here on the driver's side motor mount, as I'm taking it loose, I've got an 18mm socket on this end, 18mm wrench on this end. Even though the weight of the engine is holding down on the bolt, that bolt's wanting to turn. So just take your wrench, lock it on the end of the bolt, let the wrench ride on the fender right here, it'll hold everything in place for you, and take the ratchet and take it on off. Same thing with the passenger side, bolt started turning, lock it down with a wrench. I think that needs some slicking juice. Make some noise for the fun of it. Bolt bucket. It's always handy to have that bucket of bolts around because you never know when it just might save your bacon. But if I were taking this engine out to put in, to rebuild it and put it back in, or I've got to rebuild the engine I'm going to put in behind this one or something along that lines, I would do it completely different. I wouldn't just throw a bunch of random bolts in the bucket. I'd actually head down to the Dollar General store and buy me some of those cheap freezer bags. I prefer freezer bags over sandwich bags. Why? Because they're thicker, they're tougher. They'll withstand, you know, the beating and the banging and throwing stuff around. So I'll take a freezer bag, and for instance, I don't know, valve cover bolts. I'll write valve cover bolts on the bag. Put the bolts in the bag. Then I can take that freezer bag full of valve cover bolts and put them in another box. And then as I pull parts out of the box later on and put it back together, I know what each set of bolts go to. Makes organization much easier. Good sit you on the tripod. We're going to pick the engine up and take a little weight off those engine mounts and see what we got. So check this out. Take the weight of the engine off the bolts, take them on out. Honestly, take that bracket and the alternator off, make life a lot easier on yourself, because I may end up having to put a longer bolt on the end of that to drive it on through. We'll just have to see how it works. Now, as you pick the engine up, just to take the weight off the bolts to be able to get them out, keep something in mind. You can pick it up too much and start picking up the body. Now you're loading the bolts from the bottom side instead of the weight of the engine sitting down on top. So just finesse it. Pick it up a little bit, pick your bolts. Pick it up a little bit, pick your bolts. See at what point are the bolts easy to come out. So I mentioned I may have to stick a bolt through the backside and drive it through, but also I took my screwdriver like this, put it on the head of that bolt, hit it back in the screwdriver right here, it'll knock that bolt on out. I know it's going to fall off if I can't hold the camera too, and my tripod's over there, and oh my gosh, the drama. You see one side of the mount just fell out right there, but I'm noticing that I've got a problem. That's something I'm going to have to fight the whole time I'm pulling this engine. Look, my chain's loose, my jack's bleeding down. This thing is so old, so I may have to figure out something here. I had those chains tight right there, and yeah, So I worked with the jack for a little bit, sprayed some PB Blaster beside there, worked it back and forth. I've got to screw in a little bit tighter, which is making the jack, making the arm boom, whatever you call it, is bleeding down slower. So I think I can manage to make this happen. Now for you rookies out there that's never pulled an engine before, make sure your equipment is A-OK, because this could actually turn into a really sketchy situation. Simply because, let's just say hypothetically, I get that engine out there and it's swinging and I move it back, and that jack decides to tap out, the whole thing can just drop. So, do I think it's going to happen? No. Is it possible it could happen? Yes. The thing of it is, don't get under it. So, yeah. I'm going to start jacking it up, get the bolts the rest of the way out, and see what happens. That turned into a job. Watch it, jack bleeding down, and I've got that valve cranked as tight as I can get it. Yeah, this jack bleeding down is making this awful hard. So I've got them both out. That right there was a bear to get out of there, because the engine was the engine kept dropping, which wanted to put the whole thing in a twist. It was kind of hard to pull that thing out of there. So now I've got that loosened up. I put a jack under the tail shaft of the transmission. I'm going to take it out now to allow the engine and transmission to tilt. Let's see if we can bring this baby out of here. I took the jack out of the tail shaft of the transmission. That mount's high right now, which is where it needs to be. If it'll stay there, dang jack. If you ever pry this mount up off of this one, this holds on to it. It really isn't this hard, people. Okay, so we got it resting on top of that motor mount right now. Something is keeping it from coming this way. And I believe, I'm pretty sure that I forgot to unhook the shifter. So, let me kind of eyeball under there, see what I find. Yep, that's what I did. That's one thing about shooting videos for like how-to stuff, is that stay so occupied, paying attention to what the camera sees, making sure you get the right shot. That, yeah, I overlooked a lot of stuff that you guys don't see on camera. So I need to get me a screwdriver so I can wedge that out of there. And when I do, it's subject to move a little bit. Oh, that's down. And now I've got the kick down cable here, or TV cable, whatever the heck you call that thing. Looks like I got bolt there, and snap that off. Ew. Yummy. Now let's see if we get anywhere. She's hanging. Okay, so now we're caught on the oil filter over here. Man. Might be clear, we're almost clear. We're clear there. Now we're hitting on starter. Almost there. I can hear the keyboard now. So we have to go. You're an idiot. There's easy ways of doing that. Yeah, you're right, but I'm picking the hard way today. If I would have taken the exhaust loose from the header, that'd been better. If I'd taken the starter off, it'd been better. But it's coming out. If I had darn cherry picker that wasn't bleeding down, it would definitely be better. It was hung on the bell house in that time. They're just making it forward. We're getting there. I done kicked the camera over here. You guys get a little different angle. That also, I keep getting awful close to the camera. Here you go. Jack up a little more. Now the good thing, I don't have to worry about setting it down. It's doing that on its own. So I've got an exhaust pipe over here dragging on it now. On that side we got exhaust dragging on the bumper. Taking a little more, I think we are clear. So as I said, the jack bleeding down is setting it down very slowly. I mean, yeah, I can turn that valve, go ahead and set it on down, but as sketchy as it is, I don't know if it'll set it down slow or bam. Oh, scratched my paint. Who cares? Couple car dollies, one under the transmission pan, one under the oil pan. Once it sits down there, hopefully the transmission pan being so flat will help balance out the engine, and then I can maneuver this thing around, pushing it wherever I need it. It liked about that much from touching until I run out of ram. Set it on the jack stand, transmission's on that car dolly. chain's loose, unhook the chains, drop this down a couple lengths, and that'll give me just enough drop to set it on the car dolly. There she is resting on the car dollies. I'm gonna do a couple things though. The back end is a little bit light because that dolly right there is under the oil pan. You've got all this weight right here hanging out front, which will make it a little bit, light in the tail. I'll take a couple tie down straps, one go around the transmission, locking that one to it, and one around this right here, locking it to the engine. And since it's a little bit light to tail end, because the car dolly's right here under the oil pan, you've got all this metal hanging out here that's not being supported. It's wanting to like a little bit light in the tail. So, which is okay, because that tells me I can bolt the transfer case on back here. That whole assembly will then be mobile, and I can move it out of my way wherever I need it. Once you get it all strapped down, look how easy this is. No problem moving it around your garage or driveway. For this and more great Jeep videos, be sure to subscribe. Hit that thumbs up if you liked the video. Check out www.fixjeeps.com. That's my website for lots of great Jeeping information. Peace. Later, y'all.